What if becoming a hero meant willingly walking into the jaws of death and you only got one shot to survive? Welcome to the brutal, magical world of Depths of Vanath, where your graduation test is fighting monsters in a cursed cave, and failure means dying alone in the dark. Let's talk about why this indie fantasy debut might just be your next obsession. All right, let's go through and jump into the plot summary. Depths of Vanath follows Halleck and Elowin, two teenagers training to become Grimnir's magical warriors charged with defending their island nation. But the price of gaining magic is steep. You must enter Vanath, a monster infested realm, and survive. Those who do emerge transform into one of the four magical classes. Those who don't are never seen again. As the story unfolds, Halleck pushes for early entry into Vanath, driven by his need for strength and answers about his missing father. Elowin, more cautious but no less determined, dreams of becoming a rare Voyager to reactivate ancient portals. But everything is thrown into chaos when an undead monster of legend appears on the shore of their safe island. The event triggers a chain reaction of danger, prophecy, and a long buried secret as the students are forced into action far sooner than they expected. So let's jump into the writing style. Brady Hunsaker's prose is crisp, fluid, and cinematic. Scenes are tightly written with sharp pacing, vivid action that feels very easy to visualize in your head, whether it's the tension training sequence or the chaotic monster encounters. You're right there with the characters, and it is so much fun. The dialogue is natural and carries a good emotional weight, especially in those moments of vulnerability and tension. The narration flow is clean between the characters' perspective. Dialogue is natural and carries that emotional weight, especially in those moments of vulnerability and tension. The world building is smartly woven into the narration. Instead of those long info dumps, you get details throughout the context. That you get insights on the training rituals, the cultural traditions, and snippets of folklore that makes this world really feel lived in and layered. There's a strong sense of momentum throughout the whole story with clear stakes and those emotional through lines that really carry the story forward. Jumping into the themes and tones of Depths of Vanath, at its heart, it is a classic tale of transition from student to warrior, from safety to sacrifice. There is a constant battle of inner doubt and outer pressure, often forced our characters to act before they're really ready. There's themes of missing fathers, vanishing colleagues, and ancient betrayal, all built into this world's mystery. There is a sense of sacrifice and duty within this story. Being a Grimnir is not just a power, it is a burden of responsibility, and the story never lets you forget it as you're going through and reading this book, that there's always going to be a sacrifice for these Grimniers. The tone, it feels like high stakes with occasional levity between the characters. It's serious, but it's not even close to grimdark at all. It does have that hopeful but not naiveness to the story. There's a lot of great symbolism in this story, from the monsters in the dungeon, the transformation of the characters, that rebirthness, and the facing of your darkest past. It's a lot of fun to go through and catch those little symbolisms within the story. Some of the pros and cons, of course, we're going to start with the pros. There are great characters. There's great character dynamics, especially the chemistry between our main cast. There is a very cool, unique magic system that ties directly to the risk, the death, and the personal changes of our characters. The action sequences are well paced, they're very clear. There's a good balance between the training montage trope with real emotional consequences. There's a strong start with early stakes within the story. It doesn't feel like a slow burn. You get jumped in pretty quickly within the story, and then it just keeps building on top of itself. Some of the cons, the probably the biggest one is the naming conventions for some of the characters were not great, very on the nose for their role in the story. It's it's probably my biggest issue is some of the naming characters. My one of my favorite characters' name is terrible within this story, and I don't seem like to be the only one that has that opinion. I was talking with a few people, and it seems to be the same consensus across the board. A few of the world building elements are intriguing, but remained vague until later on in the story. And then the pacing dips a little bit during the second act before building back up again for the big climax of the story. So, jumping into my final thoughts, I went in expecting a cool, magical academy setup with some solid monster encounters. But what I got was a deeply emotional, tightly written fantasy story about survival, identity, and the price of the transformation. The cast feel real, they have their own voice, and it is in a world that feels lived in. The characters' goals, their fears, their determinations, they all clicked. It was very well done. Each of the characters felt like their own actions and decisions were not just there to keep the story moving, it made sense for the actual characters. The writing I mentioned is fluid, it's cinematic. The pacing doesn't really drag. It the pacing gets off a little bit during part of the story, but overall it doesn't drag. The emotional stakes are always clear, and the mystery disappearance of the Voyagers and the high stakes of the trial of Vanath itself was something very cool and something very well done. I'm going to go through, and I ended up going through and giving this book a 9 out of 10. I really loved it. It was a very strong indie fantasy opening I've read in a while. Something I really needed at that perfect time. This was such a great book. It was so much fun to go through. And now there is something else that I thought was very cool that the author, Brady Hunsaker, does. He's going through and letting his newsletter readers vote on where the story goes next in book two. Yes, he lets us decide where the characters are going to go in book two. He went through and gave two options and says, hey, here's a little bit about this area, and this is what kind of the story might be going to, or hey, here's another location, which I thought was very, very cool of letting the community help shape the future of the Grimnir Chronicles. It felt very interactive storytelling at its finest. It really gave off that D&D feel within the story of letting the readers decide where things are going. And honestly, I think that's what's making me extra excited for the sequels, because I feel like I have a voice on where I would like to see this story going next. So honestly, if you enjoy high stake trials of magic and survival, emotional characters, a dark myth heavy world with monsters, mystery, and meaning, then you definitely need to go through and check out the Depths of Vanath. It's absolutely worth your time. If you read it, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you have not read this, now's your time to dive into the depths. And I really do appreciate you watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe. You know what to do. Till I see you in the next one.